Today we're going to talk about the second of 4 Final Fantasy Commander decks. This one is Counter Blitz, and it is green, white, blue. There are 25 new cards in this deck, and if you guys want to go ahead and subscribe to the channel, be sure to hit that like button and click the bell icon if you want to be notified when new videos are posted. And as always, go ahead and leave a comment in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think is the coolest card in this deck, and kind of how you're feeling about it as a whole. Now, like I did yesterday for the Cloud deck, which I have already posted on the channel, I'm going to go through this relatively quickly, especially with some of the lesser cards that I just don't think are necessarily worth spending a good bit of time on in this video. I want to cover the new cards, but also not have the video be, extremely long, so that's sort of the game plan here. We are looking at the face commander first. That is Titus, Yunas Guardian. It is a green, white, blue legendary human warrior. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may move a counter from target creature you control onto a second target creature you control. Whenever one or more creatures you control with counters on them deal combat damage to a player, you may draw a card and proliferate. Do this only once each turn. So I do like a lot about this card, specifically the fact that it has a lot of fun play paths you can take with it, because there's so many different counter-based decks, obviously, but being able to, increase the number of a counter on something and then move it to something else. Like if you had a card with an indestructible counter, you could proliferate, and then you could move an indestructible counter onto something else. I think this is just kind of a fun concept that could open the door for a lot of different ways to build the deck. And generally speaking, proliferate can be useful. Obviously, you could play this with poison counters and stuff in some capacity, but then you're not really able to do as much with the first part of its effect. So I think people are going to find a lot of ways to make this card work, but I think it does have some potential as a commander. I just would need to maybe sit down and do a little bit more brainstorming before I could get into an in-depth analysis about it. Yuna Grand Summoner is 1 green, white, blue. It's the alternate commander for the deck. Legendary human cleric with Grand Summon. You can tap, add 1 mana of any color. When you next cast a creature spell this turn, that creature enters with 2 additional +1/+1 counters. Whenever another permanent you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, if it had 1 or more counters on it, you may put that number of +1/+1 counters on target creature. I actually like this card a lot. I think it's my favorite of the 2 commanders here. I like the fact that it essentially can function as an Ozolith of sorts. I mean, it doesn't store the counters, but being able to move your counters around to stuff, especially with +1/+1 counters if you're playing doublers and things like that, there are ways to get some things beefed up pretty quickly with this being on the board, and it obviously is really conducive to, with green and white, having access to a lot of cards that can generate counters. I think this is just a really fun card, and I think it's going to be a cool option as the commander. It would be my preference out of the 2 as the commander, but I also think that, again, Titus does have plenty of application in his own right. Now, moving on to the cards that are in the deck itself, we've got Oruron, Venerated Guardian. This is 3 and a white legendary human spirit samurai with vigilance. When it attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on it. When you do, exile target creature defending player controls with power less than Oron's power until Oruron leaves the battlefield. So being able to do this multiple times would be kind of crazy. Obviously with decks like Ixion, where you can, trigger, on attack effects multiple times, you can exile multiple things, kind of buff this up and then have a clean shot to get through when you're attacking. I like this card on paper, and I do think it works well, obviously being a samurai as well, with some of the, exalted and other concepts that we've seen in recent sets. Overall, I just think this is a cool card that will fit really well into a lot of already existing decks. Now, Chobo Knights. This card is crazy. This is 3 and a white, creature human knight. Whenever you attack creatures you control with counters on them, gain double strike until end of turn. Just a wild card. Being able to spam counters is not hard, and if you can just get any kind of counter on stuff, you're then having a massive board of double strikers, which is huge for obvious reasons. This is just a really good card that is absolutely going to see play in a lot of different decks. There's not much more to get into on that surface. Now, Gada and Luzu, I think I got that right, or is it Luzu? I don't know, I would think it's Luzu, but 2 and a white, legendary creature, human soldier with flash. When it enters, choose target creature you control. If damage will be dealt to that creature this turn, prevent that damage and put that many +1/+1 counters on it. Obviously, flash makes this very easy to pull off. If your opponent's swinging with something large or just hitting for a lot of damage in general, and you drop this at the right moment, you not only save your creature, but then you get a potentially very big creature coming out of it, which is obviously kind of what you're looking for, especially with the counter generation. So another good card that can be both a protection and in some cases, an offensive card you can utilize too. Lord Jiskal Guado, 1 and a white, legendary creature, spirit cleric. At the beginning of each end step, if you put a counter on a creature this turn, investigate. Pretty solid, low to the ground in terms of its mana cost, easy way to generate some clue tokens, get some artifacts out. you know, not the greatest card ever, but it's certainly got a lot of application, especially in decks that want to generate tokens and just have some additional draw power. Protection magic is 1 and a white. Put a shield counter on each of up to 3 target creatures. If a creature with a shield counter be damaged or destroyed, remove a shield counter from it instead. Nice to see the shield counters making a little bit of a comeback from Capenna, of course. Not a terrible card. I mean, there are definitely cards that cost around the same that do, you know, pretty similar things. Like Heroic Intervention gives everything indestructible. And this is pretty much that. But I think the difference, of course, is that you can obviously, you know, choose which ones you want to put it on. Maybe I'm wrong, and if I'm missing something, feel free to call me out in the comments, but it just seems like a less effective version of like Dawn's Truce or Heroic Intervention. Like, it's cool, but it's not really the card I would think you need to play. Summon Ixion is 2 and a white. It is a Saga creature, enchantment unicorn. First strike, it is a 3/3, and then when it gets its first counter, you exile target creature an opponent controls until it leaves the battlefield. And then when it gets its second and third, you put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures you control. You gain 2 life. So it's an Oblivion Ring that is a creature that can also do other stuff, which is really cool. Obviously, there's, you know, maybe there's some ways to reduce the number of counters on it, keep it around longer, but just being able to get rid of something problematic, at least for a couple of turns, can give you the opportunity to maybe play around whatever it is your opponents have going a bit better. And then we've got Summon Yojimbo. This is 3 and a white. It is a 5/5 enchantment creature, Saga Samurai with Vigilance. And exile target artifact, enchantment, or tap creature and opponent controls. That's what happened on its first. And then second and third say until your next turn, creatures can't attack you unless their controller pays 2 for each of those creatures. And finally, its fourth says create X treasure tokens, where X is the number of opponents who control a creature with power 4 or greater. That first effect is definitely solid. Obviously, being able to get rid of a tap creature or any problematic artifact or enchantment is nice. Next couple turns, it turns your board into a ghostly prison, basically. And then, you know, the treasure tokens can be solid. It's overall a pretty decent card. I think some of these summon cards are definitely stronger than others, but it's certainly playable, especially being an enchantment creature that has that going for it. Summoner's Sending is 1 and a white enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, you may exile target creature card from a graveyard. If you do, create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. Put a +1/+1 counter on it if the exiled card's mana value is 4 or greater. Honestly, not terrible for disruption. It can definitely be good against graveyard-focused decks. You're generating flying tokens, and you can potentially buff those up as well. Of course, it has to get rid of a creature card, so it's not like you can just exile other stuff and still get tokens, but depending on the decks and the matchups, it's certainly not awful. Blitzball Stadium is X and a blue artifact. When it enters, support X, which says put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to X target creatures, and then go for the goal. You can pay 3 and tap until end of turn. Target creature gains whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player. Draw a card for each kind of counter on it, and it can't be blocked this turn. So, honestly, pretty cool. You're guaranteeing that it's going to get through, and then you get some draw cards, you know, in addition. Obviously, with you could just play this for, like, realistically, I don't know, 1 and a blue, and you put a counter on something, and then, you know, you can use that effect on a later turn. But if you have more creatures out, there's a good way to generate some additional counters. So it's got some utility, which we like to see. We've got Lulu Stern Guardian. Lulu Stern Guardian is a legendary creature, human wizard. Whenever an opponent attacks you, choose target creature attacking you, put a stun counter on that creature. And then it has Proliferate. Of course, you can pay 3 and a blue, and then stack up your tokens. I know a lot of people like Lulu as a card. Unfortunately, I don't think this is like a crazy card by any stretch, but obviously it can be a bit of an annoyance. It's limited to choosing like just the target creature, put a stun counter on it. It's not exactly doing a ton for you outside of the proliferating, in my opinion. Aaka Traveling Merchant is 1 and a blue, legendary creature, human citizen. You can tap it to remove a counter from a non-land permanent you control, then draw a card. Not bad. I wish you could use it to remove counters from yourself, like poison counters. That would be kind of a cool little interaction there, but I understand, I guess, the reasoning behind not doing it that way. We've got RKU Resourceful Guardian. It's 2 and a blue, legendary creature, human artificer. Whenever you put 1 or more counters on a creature until end of turn, that creature can't be blocked by creatures your opponents control. And then it has steal. You can pay 1 and tap, move a counter from target creature and opponent controls to target creature you control. Activate only as a sorcery. Kind of funny, again, if your opponents just steal your opponent's counters and, you know, throw their whole plan into disarray, make their things weaker. Obviously, it depends on the type of counter deck they're playing, and not every time is it going to be applicable, but it's not bad, and being able to turn off, you know, make it so your creatures can't be blocked and will get through is definitely a pretty good trade-off, I think. Summon Valfor is 4 and a blue with Sonic Wings. Each opponent chooses a creature with the greatest mana value among creatures they control, return them to the hand, and then the next 3 Saga turns say tap up to 1 target creature and put a stun counter on it. It is a 5/4 enchantment creature, Saga Drake with flying. Pretty cool. We've also got Sphere Grid, which is 1 and a green enchantment. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature. Then it has Unlockability. Creatures you control with +1/+1 counters on them have Reach and Trample. I actually like this card a lot. I think it's really, really strong. Being able to stack counters is good, but also giving everything Reach and Trample for such a low mana investment is going to be awesome for like stompy decks or Gruul decks that want to just be able to push through. Obviously will work well within Commander decks too. We've got Master Seymour, which I covered yesterday. I mistakenly thought this was in the Cloud deck. It is not. My thoughts on that card, though, are pretty much still the same. It's definitely a nice card that has some potential, but I kind of don't necessarily think it's game-breaking in any stretch there. We've got Summon Magus Sisters. It is 4 and a green. All 3 of its saga phases say choose one at random. Either put 3 +1/+1 counters on target creature, put a shield counter on target creature, you gain 3 life, or this creature fights up to 1 target creature and opponent controls. It is a 5/5 enchantment creature, Saga Fairy with haste. I'm guessing that the random, you just, I don't know, roll a die and have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or whatever to determine it. Obviously the randomness is tricky, but it's certainly a cool card from a concept perspective. I don't know how good it's actually going to be, so we'll have to see. We've got Tremels Butler. It's 2 and a green, legendary creature, Elf Advisor. Each other non-token creature you control enters with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. You can pay 1 and tap to proliferate X times, where X is the number of non-token creatures you control that entered this turn. This card is really good, especially in elves, I think, because of how many low-cost elves there are. You can spam a few of them out and then proliferate a bunch to really stack up your counters. I like this card quite a bit. I think it's going to be very popular and probably one of the better cards in this precon up to this point, as long as you're playing it in a deck that can make use of low-cost cards. Yunas Decision is 3 and a green. Sorcery, choose one. Either sack a creature, then draw a card, and you may put a creature and or a land from your hand onto the battlefield, or return 1 or 2 target permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. I do kind of like that first effect. 4 mana, sacking a creature to put a creature card out for free and a land from the hand is definitely pretty strong. We do have some cards in green that can cheat things out without worrying about the cost, but this does it for a lot less mana, which is really interesting. I think I'll probably end up throwing this in a couple of green decks I have, just because of the ability to kind of not ramp, but get more quickly into what you want to bring out. Yunas Whistle is 1 and 2 green instant. Reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card. Put that card into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. When you reveal a creature card this way, put X +1/+1 counters on target creature you control, where X is the mana value of that card. Not bad. I mean, it's random, right? So, I mean, obviously there are ways you can maybe set that up by stacking the deck, but generally speaking, it's, it's largely going to be random, but it's not bad. It's a little costly, but feels like there's absolutely some potential there, especially if you have a big creature, high mana value creature, you just spam a bunch of counters on something. We've got Kimahheri, or Kimahheri. I'm sorry, I know I'm mispronouncing some of these names. It's just tricky when there's so many things I'm going through. Valiant Guardian. It is 2 green blue, legendary creature, Cat Warrior with Vigilance. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put a +1/+1 counter on it and tap target creature and opponent controls. Then you may have this card become a copy of that creature, except it keeps its name and has Vigilance and this ability. Really interesting card. I think actually could be fun as a commander in and of itself, but being able to tap your opponent's creatures and then copy them while also kind of keeping, your own ability to do this on future turns, and Vigilance, not bad. I like the uniqueness of that card design. We've got Shelinda Yvonne Acolyte, which is a green and a white. It is a legendary human cleric with lifelink. Whenever another creature you control enters, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature if its power is less than Shelinda's power. Otherwise, put a +1/+1 counter on Shelinda. Just a pretty solid card overall for Celestia, and it generates counters, what we like to see. Sin Unending Cataclysm is 5 green blue, legendary creature Leviathan Avatar with flying and trample. When it enters, remove all counters from any number of artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. Then Sin enters with X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is twice the number of counters removed this way. When it dies, put its counters on target creature you control, then shuffle it into its owner's library. I love this card. This is really funny and really goofy, and you can absolutely mess up your opponent while also making use of your own counters if you have them on other stuff to just completely load this up. It also has flying and trample. If you can give it haste, it could probably end the game pretty quick once you bring it out. I really like this card a lot. This will probably slot right into Zimone. I think a lot of Simic decks will be able to make use of this as long as you're playing some counters. And I mean, imagine entering with twice that many counters, then you have like a Vorinclex or doubling season out, and it's getting even more counters. Like, just kind of being able to swing, and then knowing that even if it does die, you can move its counters elsewhere is a pretty crazy option there for that card. And finally, we've got Waka, Devoted Guardian. This is 2 green-white legendary creature human warrior with reach and trample. Whenever Waka deals combat damage to a player, destroy up to 1 target artifact that player controls and put a +1/+1 counter on Waka. At the beginning of your end step, if a counter was put on Waka this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on each other creature you control. Pretty solid again, not a bad card by any stretch. You know, it's a little combat damage reliant, but still being able to get rid of an artifact and get some extra counters is solid. And then being able to, you know, put extra counters on creatures as long as this got a counter in any form is definitely not terrible. Overall, I think this deck has a lot of really exciting cards. I don't think it's as cool as the Cloud deck, but there is a lot of fun pieces that I'd almost like to get and like put into other decks, which I think is really a good sign for a precon, you know, in terms of its value. But yeah, I like it a lot. I know I went a little quickly on this, but I hope you guys were able to kind of follow along and let me know what you think. And let me know in the comment section down below if this is a deck you think you're going to be purchasing, if it's one you're interested in, and if not, maybe what you don't like about it. Also, did I not give enough credit to some cards in here that seem pretty good and maybe just kind of glossed over? I'd love to hear from you guys on all of your thoughts, and I'll catch you in the next video.